My name's Daniel, I'm 33, and I've always been the one who carried responsibility in my family without ever getting the credit. You know that role, the one who quietly pays the bills, shows up on time, remembers everyone's birthday, and helps out whenever there's a crisis? That's me. Not the golden child, not the rebel, not even the favorite. Just the dependable one in the background, the one who makes things work while everyone else takes the spotlight. My younger brother, Matthew, has always been the star. He's the loud, charming type who can get away with just about anything. Growing up, he was the one teachers excused, neighbors adored, and my parents bragged about at every opportunity. Even when he dropped out of college, quit job after job, and moved back home at 28. He had this way of messing up big but still being treated like some kind of misunderstood genius. Meanwhile, I worked steady hours, paid off my student loans, and even helped cover my parents' mortgage when Dad's work hours were cut. None of that seemed to matter. At best, I was tolerated. At worst, I was invisible. Still, I kept showing up. Part of me hoped that one day, if I kept proving myself useful, they'd actually see me, not just as a convenient wallet, but as family. That hope was tested last Christmas. It started with a call from my mom in early December. Her voice was sweet, almost syrupy, the exact tone she used when she wanted something. "Daniel, honey," she began, dragging out the words like she was easing me into bad news. "We're planning something really special this year. A big Christmas dinner, all of us together. It's going to be at this beautiful restaurant downtown. You'll come, right?" I didn't hesitate. "Of course. Just send me the details." There was a pause, then her voice softened even more. "And, if it's not too much trouble, could you maybe help with the reservation? Just to hold it. We'll pay you back." I almost laughed at that part. "We'll pay you back." I'd heard it before. It never happened. But I told myself it was fine. It was Christmas, after all. If this dinner was important to them, I could handle the deposit. So I called the restaurant, booked a private dining room for 20 people, and put down my card. It wasn't cheap, but I thought maybe, just maybe, this year I'd feel included instead of sidelined. When Christmas Eve finally came, I ironed my best shirt, polished my shoes, and even splurged on a nice bottle of champagne for the toast. I wanted to walk in with my head high, ready to be part of the celebration, not just the guy footing the bill. But I had no idea how wrong I was. When I walked into the private dining room that night, I was hit with warm lights, festive decorations, and the sound of laughter echoing off the walls. My parents were there. Matthew was front and center, his fiancée on his arm, and the rest of the family was already deep into drinks and conversation. I smiled, expecting at least a nod of welcome. Instead, Matthew smirked at me and pointed to the far side of the room. "Hey, you made it," he said casually. "Sorry, this table's for family only. But don't worry, we've got a spot for you over there." I followed his finger and froze. There it was, a single folding chair shoved against the wall, next to the trash bin. For a moment, I thought Matthew was joking. Surely he wouldn't actually sit me away from the table I had reserved, from the dinner I had paid for. But then I glanced at my mother. She just gave me her usual tight-lipped smile, the one she wore whenever she didn't want to get involved. My father chuckled softly, like it was some harmless prank. And Matthew's fiancée didn't even look up. The laugh that followed from a few cousins stung more than I care to admit. I stood there, holding the champagne I'd bought, feeling like I'd walked into a play where everyone had rehearsed their lines except me. "Go on," Matthew urged, pointing again. "Seat's right there, man. Don't make it awkward." My throat tightened. I wanted to argue, to say something clever, but all that came out was silence. Slowly, I walked over, set the champagne bottle beside the chair, and sat down. Alone. Next to the trash. I didn't even take my coat off. The waiter came by after a while and asked, "Sir, are you with the party?" I nodded. He hesitated, then just placed a glass of water in front of me without another word. From where I sat, I had a perfect view of everyone else enjoying themselves. The toasts, the laughter, the clinking of wine glasses. I watched as plates of appetizers went around, crab cakes, little towers of smoked salmon. None of it reached me. 2 hours passed like that. Me, in my corner. Them, celebrating like I was invisible. The worst part wasn't the exclusion. It was the realization that no one thought twice about it. Not one person said, "Hey, isn't Daniel supposed to sit with us?" Not one relative made space or waved me over. I was background noise, tolerated but not included. And then came the moment that cracked everything open. The waiter returned, this time holding the bill in its neat leather folder. He approached Matthew's table, glanced around, then turned and headed toward me. "Excuse me, sir," he said quietly. "The total for the evening is $3,482. Would you like me to run the same card you used for the deposit?" Every head at the table turned toward me. Matthew leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Oh yeah," he said casually. "Daniel's got it." My mother looked at me like it was already settled, like of course I'd just pay without complaint. My dad raised his glass as if to toast me, as if that counted as gratitude. I smiled, but it wasn't my usual polite smile. It was tighter. Sharper. "Not my table," I said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room went silent. Even the soft Christmas music in the background seemed to fade. Matthew blinked. "What?" I leaned back, keeping my voice calm. "I was told this table is for family only. And apparently, I don't belong." I gestured toward the trash bin beside me. "So I won't be paying for your dinner." The waiter froze, unsure whether to retreat or stand his ground. My brother's smirk cracked into something uglier. "Don't be dramatic," Matthew snapped. "It was a joke." "Was it?" I asked quietly. All around the table, eyes darted between us. My mother tried to smooth it over, her voice firm but shaky. "Daniel, please. Don't make a scene." I let out a small laugh. "A scene? I've been sitting by the trash for 2 hours while you all pretended I didn't exist. The only scene here is how willing you all are to treat me like a stranger while expecting me to pay for everything." For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the quiet, overlooked one. I felt steady. Angry, yes, but also grounded. I looked at the waiter. "Find another card." I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I wasn't welcome. I won't be paying. The waiter nodded slowly, retreating toward the table with the bill still in hand. And that's when my father finally spoke. "Daniel, come on," he said, sighing like I was a child misbehaving. "You already paid the deposit. You might as well just cover the rest." Something inside me snapped. I stood. My hands were steady, my voice calm, but every word came out like a stone dropping into water. "You're right, Dad. I did pay the deposit. I made the calls. I booked the room. I picked the date. I even arranged the flowers because Mom said fake ones would look cheap in the photos. And in return, I got a folding chair next to a trash can." I let the silence hang, then turned to Matthew. "So now, you figure it out. You, and your real family." Matthew's smirk dissolved into something red and ugly. His cheeks flushed, his jaw tightened, and I could see the vein in his temple start to pulse. For once, His usual charm wasn't saving him. "You're making a scene," he spat, standing up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. "This is my night. You always do this. Turn everything into some pity party because you can't handle a joke." A ripple of whispers moved through the room. His fiancée, Claire, looked mortified, shrinking back in her seat. Her father, a stern man in a blazer, raised an eyebrow and muttered something under his breath I couldn't catch. I kept my voice steady. "A joke, huh? Sitting me by the trash while I pay for everything? That's not a joke, Matthew. That's cruelty dressed up as entertainment." My mother jumped in then, her voice sharp but brittle. "Daniel, please. Don't ruin this. You've always been so sensitive." I cut her off. "No. Don't you dare call me sensitive. That's what you always say whenever someone points out how badly you treat me. I've been carrying this family for years, and all I get in return is mockery." The room went quiet. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself doesn't want to move. Even the waiter hesitated at the edge of the room, bill still in hand, as if he didn't know which way the storm would break. Claire's father finally spoke, his voice low but cutting. "You invited this man, had him pay for the dinner, and then shoved him into a corner like an afterthought?" His eyes locked on Matthew, who suddenly looked less like the golden child and more like a sulking teenager caught red-handed. "It was just," Matthew started, but his fiancée's father cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Disgraceful." My brother's face went crimson. He turned to me, his voice dripping with venom now. "You think you're some kind of martyr? You think anyone cares that you've been covering bills and acting like the perfect son? Nobody asked you to, Daniel. You did that because you wanted to feel important." I let the words wash over me. For years, I might have crumbled at that, let the guilt chew me alive. But not tonight. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so it landed like a knife. "No, Matthew. I did it because I thought I was part of this family. Turns out, I was just the wallet." My father's face tightened. My mother looked like she might cry, not from guilt, but from embarrassment. The rest of the family sat frozen, caught between shock and shame. The waiter cleared his throat again, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, we do need to close out the bill before the room can be released." I turned to him, "Calm now. It won't be on my card. They'll figure it out." And with that, I picked up my coat, draped it over my arm, and walked toward the door. Each step felt heavy but certain, like I was finally drawing a line I should have drawn years ago. Behind me, I heard Matthew mutter, "Unbelievable," followed by my mother's shaky attempt to smooth things over. But there was no smoothing this over. Not anymore. When I reached the doorway, I paused. Not to give them another chance. Not to beg for inclusion. Just to make one thing clear. I turned back and said, "Enjoy your dinner. Consider this my last gift." Then I walked out, leaving them to stew in the silence I'd carved into the room. Matthew's smirk dissolved into something red and ugly. His cheeks flushed, his jaw tightened, and I could see the vein in his temple start to pulse. For once, his usual charm wasn't saving him. "You're making a scene," he spat, standing up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. "This is my night. You always do this, turn everything into some pity party because you can't handle a joke." A ripple of whispers moved through the room. His fiancée, Claire, looked mortified, shrinking back in her seat. Her father, a stern man in a blazer, raised an eyebrow and muttered something under his breath I couldn't catch. I kept my voice steady. "A joke, huh? Sitting me by the trash while I pay for everything? That's not a joke, Matthew. That's cruelty dressed up as entertainment. My mother jumped in then, her voice sharp but brittle. Daniel, please. Don't ruin this. You've always been so sensitive. I cut her off. No. Don't you dare call me sensitive. That's what you always say whenever someone points out how badly you treat me. I've been carrying this family for years, and all I get in return is mockery. The room went quiet. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself doesn't want to move. Even the waiter hesitated at the edge of the room, bill still in hand, as if he didn't know which way the storm would break. Claire's father finally spoke, his voice low but cutting. You invited this man, had him pay for the dinner, and then shoved him into a corner like an afterthought? His eyes locked on Matthew, who suddenly looked less like the golden child and more like a sulking teenager caught red-handed. It was just, Matthew started, but his fiancée's father cut him off with a sharp gesture. Disgraceful. My brother's face went crimson. He turned to me, his voice dripping with venom now. You think you're some kind of martyr? You think anyone cares that you've been covering bills and acting like the perfect son? Nobody asked you to, Daniel. You did that because you wanted to feel important. I let the words wash over me. For years, I might have crumbled at that, let the guilt chew me alive. But not tonight. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so it landed like a knife. No, Matthew. I did it because I thought I was part of this family. Turns out, I was just the wallet. My father's face tightened. My mother looked like she might cry, not from guilt, but from embarrassment. The rest of the family sat frozen, caught between shock and shame. The waiter cleared his throat again, clearly uncomfortable. Sir, we do need to close out the bill before the room can be released. I turned to him, calm now. It won't be on my card. They'll figure it out. And with that, I picked up my coat, draped it over my arm, and walked toward the door. Each step felt heavy but certain, like I was finally drawing a line I should have drawn years ago. Behind me, I heard Matthew mutter, "Unbelievable," followed by my mother's shaky attempt to smooth things over. But there was no smoothing this over. Not anymore. When I reached the doorway, I paused. Not to give them another chance. Not to beg for inclusion. Just to make one thing clear. I turned back and said, "Enjoy your dinner. Consider this my last gift." Then I walked out, leaving them to stew in the silence I'd carved into the room. The cold air outside hit me like a slap, but it was a relief compared to the suffocating silence I'd just walked out of. My heart was pounding, my palms were clammy, and yet for the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was heading. All I knew was that I wasn't going back in there. I loosened my tie and shoved my hands into my coat pockets, walking fast through the city streets lit with Christmas lights. Families passed me, laughing, holding shopping bags, children tugging at their parents' sleeves. All of them looked warm, connected. Everything I had wanted tonight to be. My phone buzzed. Once. Twice. A dozen times in less than a minute. Mom, Daniel, come back. Stop being dramatic. Dad, we can talk about this tomorrow. Just cover it now. Matthew, grow up, man. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Another text from Mom. We'll pay you back, okay? Just finish the bill for tonight. I stopped in my tracks, staring at the glowing screen. It was almost laughable. Even now, after humiliating me, after dismissing me, after sitting me by a trash can, they still thought I'd just cave, pull out my card, and clean up their mess. I typed back one sentence. Not my table, not my problem. Then I put my phone on silent and kept walking. For the first time, the city felt alive around me. The bite of the winter air, the twinkling lights, the distant carols from a group of buskers, it all grounded me in a way my family never had. But as much as I wanted to leave it all behind, part of me couldn't help but imagine what was happening back in that private dining room. I could picture it clearly, the waiter still standing there with the bill, my parents fumbling for their wallets, Matthew fuming but too proud to admit he couldn't cover the full amount. Claire's father looking at them all with thinly veiled disgust. The golden child exposed, the perfect family image cracked wide open. And maybe that's why, for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel overlooked. I felt like I had finally drawn a boundary they couldn't ignore. I found a small cafe still open on the corner, ducked inside, and ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu. I sat by the window, coat still on, watching the snow start to drift against the glass. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't reach for it. Not yet. Instead, I just sat there, letting the warmth of the mug in my hands chase the cold from my fingers. For the first Christmas in my adult life, I wasn't the family's invisible workhorse. I was free. By the time I finally pulled my phone back out, the screen was glowing with missed calls and messages. 15 from Mom. 8 from Dad. 5 from Matthew, all in rapid fire. Even Claire had texted me once, though hers just said, "I'm sorry for tonight." I didn't know they'd do that. I opened the family group chat. "Mom, Daniel, the waiter is waiting. Please just pay and we'll sort it out later. Dad, we're embarrassing ourselves. Handled poorly or not, you started this dinner. Finish it. Matthew, you're pathetic. You ruined my night because you couldn't take a joke." Another from Mom. "People are staring. Don't do this to us. Please." I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud, startling the barista wiping down tables. The sheer gall of it. I had sat through 2 hours of being ignored, shoved aside, treated like trash, literally, and now I was the one embarrassing them? I typed slowly, choosing every word with care. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I wasn't welcome. I won't pay. I hit send and placed the phone face down on the table. Not even a minute passed before it buzzed again. I turned it over and saw a new message, this one not from my parents but from Claire's father. "Unknown number. Good for you. About time someone said it." I blinked at the screen, stunned. My chest tightened, not with anger this time, but with something closer to relief. Someone in that room had actually seen me. Before I could respond, another text popped up, this one from Matthew. "Matthew, you think you've won? You just made yourself the villain. Nobody's gonna forget this, Dan. Nobody." That one didn't sting the way it used to. I just let it sit there, words from a man who had coasted on charm and favoritism his whole life, finally confronted with consequences. I sipped my coffee and leaned back, staring out at the snow thickening on the streets. For once, I didn't feel like I had to defend myself. But then came another message, from Dad. "Dad, son, you've already paid half. Might as well just finish it. Don't be selfish." That word. Selfish. After years of helping with their mortgage, bailing them out of emergencies, covering birthdays, anniversaries, and now Christmas dinner, I was selfish because I refused to be humiliated and then pay for the privilege. I set the phone down carefully, but inside, something cracked clean in two. No more. I stared at that word, selfish, until the letters blurred. It was the final insult, the perfect summary of how they had always seen me. Not as a son, not as a brother, not even as a person with feelings. Just as a resource. A wallet with a heartbeat. I could almost hear my dad's tone in that message. Calm, dismissive, laced with that familiar authority that demanded obedience. 4 years, I'd swallowed it. 4 years, I'd nodded along, telling myself that keeping the peace mattered more than speaking up. But sitting in that cafe, watching snow swirl past the window, I realized peace had never been part of the deal. Only silence. My silence. So I broke it. I opened the chat, my thumbs shaking at first, but then steadying as the words poured out of me. You're right, Dad. I did pay the deposit. I booked the room, arranged the flowers, and showed up on time in a suit while you all laughed without me. And in return, you gave me a folding chair by the trash and told me I wasn't family. So no, I won't finish it. Not now. Not ever. I'm done being your backup wallet. Find someone else. I hit send. The little delivered checkmark appeared, and for a moment, I felt lighter than I had in years. The replies came fast. Mom, Daniel, don't say things you'll regret. We didn't mean it like that. Matthew, crybaby. You love playing the victim. Dad, we raised you better than this. Family takes care of each other. I laughed bitterly at that one. Family takes care of each other? That was rich, coming from the same people who had just shoved me out of the circle so Matthew could play golden boy again. I typed one last message. You made it clear tonight that I'm not part of this family. Don't call me when you need money. Don't call me at all. And then I muted the group chat. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was freeing. I leaned back in my chair, sipping what was now lukewarm coffee, and felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. Outside, a couple walked by holding hands, their laughter muffled by the glass. A little boy ran after them, dragging a stuffed reindeer through the snow. For once, I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. I felt like I was walking away from something that had been broken for a long time. The next morning, I woke up to a buzzing phone. Dozens of notifications lit up the screen like a warning siren. Missed calls, unread texts, even a couple of voicemails. For a second, I considered turning the phone off entirely. But curiosity won. I opened the messages. Matthew, you made me look like a fool last night. Do you even realize what you did? Claire's dad thinks I'm some kind of clown now. You ruined it. Mom, Daniel, please. Everyone was so uncomfortable. You could have just gone along with it. It was one night. Dad, we don't air dirty laundry in front of others. You need to apologize to your brother. I scrolled further. More from Matthew, angrier now. Matthew, you've always been jealous. Admit it. That's why you pulled this stunt. You couldn't stand that for once. It wasn't about you. Matthew, you'll regret this. Don't come crying when no one wants you around anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, heart pounding, but not from guilt. From rage. From disbelief at just how predictable they all were. Not one of them had said sorry. Not one had admitted what they did was cruel. They had twisted it, as always, until I was the villain. Then came a new message, this one from an unfamiliar number. Unknown. Hi, this is Claire. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about last night. I didn't know they'd treat you like that. It wasn't fair. I stared at the screen for a long time. Claire. My brother's fiancée. The only person from that entire dinner who had reached out with a shred of decency. Before I could decide whether to respond, my voicemail icon blinked. I pressed play. First was Mom's voice, shaky, thick with forced tears. Daniel, honey, I don't know what's gotten into you. We're family. Families argue, but they forgive. Don't throw everything away over one silly night. Then Dad's voice, gruff and annoyed. Son, you embarrassed us. Whatever point you were trying to make, it went too far. Fix it. Today. And finally, Matthew's voice, dripping with venom. You think you won? You think anyone's on your side? You're pathetic, Daniel. Always have been. You'll die alone, and everyone will know why. The voicemail ended with a beep. I sat there, phone clutched in my hand, the words echoing in my head. 4 years, I had swallowed this exact poison. Believed it. Let it shape me into the quiet shadow they preferred. But last night had changed something. I wasn't going to swallow it anymore. I didn't answer my parents. I didn't answer Matthew. Their words, their demands, their insults, none of it deserved space in my head anymore. But Claire's message sat there, glowing on my screen, the only one that felt human. After a long pause, I typed back, "Thank you. You're the only one who noticed." I hovered over send for a second, half expecting guilt to creep in, but it never did. I hit send and set the phone down. A few minutes later, it buzzed again. Claire, I did notice. Honestly, I was embarrassed. My dad was furious. He said if this is how your family treats you, I should think long and hard about what I'm marrying into. That stopped me cold. 4 years, I thought it was just me. My problem, my oversensitivity, the reason I didn't belong. But now someone outside the family had seen it too. And not just seen it, but judged it for what it was. Cruelty. Another message came through. Claire, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. You shouldn't have to buy your way into respect. I leaned back against the wall, phone still in my hand, feeling something strange, something I hadn't felt in years. Validation. I wanted to thank her again, to tell her how much that meant, but I didn't want to put her in a worse position with Matthew. So instead, I just replied, I appreciate that. Take care of yourself. And then I left it at that. The rest of the day, I ignored my family's endless messages. Each one was the same. Guilt, anger, manipulation, and blame. They called me selfish, ungrateful, dramatic. They twisted every word until I was painted as the problem. But the truth sat quietly in the back of my mind, steady and clear. For once, I hadn't let them rewrite the story. That evening, I made myself a simple dinner at home. No noise, no accusations, no folding chairs by trash bins. Just quiet. Just mine. When I set my fork down and looked around my small, modest apartment, something unexpected washed over me. Relief. Because maybe, just maybe, being cut out of their family circus wasn't a loss. Maybe it was freedom. That night, I sat in the quiet of my apartment with nothing but the hum of the heater for company. My phone lay face down on the table, still buzzing every so often with more messages I had no intention of reading. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. I thought back over the years, the birthdays where I quietly paid the bill while Matthew soaked up the praise for being so thoughtful. The mortgage payments I slipped my parents when Dad's hours were cut, which no one ever acknowledged out loud. The way family photos always seemed to close in just before I was asked to stand behind the group or off to the side, smiling but invisible. I told myself it didn't matter. That if I kept showing up, if I kept helping, one day they'd see me differently. One day I'd be part of the circle instead of orbiting it. But last night made it undeniable. I was never meant to be included. I was meant to be useful. And there's a big difference. I picked up my phone at last and scrolled, not through the new messages, but through old ones. Years of conversations where I was asked for help, for money, for favors. Years of being needed but never truly wanted. My chest tightened, Not with grief this time, but with clarity. I wasn't going to live like that anymore. Not as their backup wallet. Not as their silent scapegoat. Not as the invisible son who footed the bill but never got a seat at the table. I opened the family group chat one last time. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't want to argue, didn't want to scream. I wanted to be done. So I typed just 2 words. I'm finished. And then I left the group. The second I hit leave, my phone went quiet. No more buzzing. No more guilt disguised as love. Just silence, clean, simple, and mine. I put the phone down, exhaled deeply, and realized something that almost made me laugh. For the first time in my life, Christmas actually felt like a gift. Christmas morning was quiet. No frantic phone calls, no obligation to rush across town with gifts or bills tucked into envelopes. Just me, a fresh pot of coffee, and the faint sound of carols from a neighbor's apartment. I sat by the window, watching the snow fall, and realized how light I felt. No knots in my stomach. No waiting for the next jab disguised as a joke. No folding chair by the trash. Just peace. The truth settled in gently, like the snow outside. I had spent years trying to buy my way into belonging, thinking if I gave enough, they'd finally let me in. But love doesn't come with a receipt. And if you have to pay to be included, you're not family, you're a customer. 4 years, I was terrified of being left out. Now, I understood something better. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is walking away from the table that never saved you a seat. My phone buzzed once, face down on the counter. I didn't check it. Whoever it was, Mom, Dad, Matthew, it didn't matter. Not today. Instead, I poured myself another cup of coffee, turned on a movie, and pulled a blanket over my legs. The kind of small, ordinary comfort that used to feel impossible when I was carrying everyone else's weight. For the first time, I wasn't just the wallet. I wasn't the shadow. I wasn't invisible. I was free. And that was enough.